This is your Sunday message. Happy Sunday, beautiful patrons. Happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. And let me just spread the love a little wider and say, Happy Parents' Day. Happy Loved Ones' Day to everyone out there who knows both the sorrow and the joy of raising and loving children, the generation that we hope will one day grow up and take care of us. So, thank you. Thank you all for your love and your support. Father's Day is always a little difficult for me. Seems like almost every single Father's Day I feel like I should have made the drive to Bentley, Louisiana, where David DeWitt, my father, has been buried now for, let me try and attempt to do the math, I guess going on close to 45 years. I am stunned when I stop and try to imagine all that has transpired in the world and in the lives of his loved ones in the last 45 years. So speaking of all that has transpired and speaking of change, my simple message, most likely short message for today, comes to me by way of my participation just a few minutes ago in a pre-recorded episode of the Gaytheist Manifesto, where I also was a guest alongside my co-host of Hope After Faith, the podcast, Bobby C. The primary guest was a young man named John who told his story of coming out of religion. And at the end of the episode, I felt compelled to encourage him to place a disclaimer on his life, almost like a sticker, a name tag across his chest on every shirt that he wears every day, encountering all the many people in his life. I'm not so sure that it is always best for non-believers, in particular new non-believers, to succumb to the pressure that does seem to exist within the secular movement of accepting a label, attaching a label to their experience, telling their story. And really this is all about storytelling. Telling our story, telling our narrative, explaining where we've come from, where we are now, and where it is that we hope that we are traveling to. And like any story, any book, those books are housed on shelves quite often according to the genre that they fall into. So it is natural for us to try and attempt to distinguish ourselves and thus our story by different labels. This message isn't an anti-label message today. But what it is a disclaimer message. I think that in ways that are sometimes unknowable at the beginning of our transition out of religion, it would be worthwhile to get into the habit and allow ourselves, if our conscience will allow us to allow ourselves, to throw out a disclaimer and say, this isn't about what I now know to be true. As a matter of fact, it's just the opposite. The reason I am where I am today, wherever that is not because of what I do know, but what I now realize I do not know. And if things change, dear interested parties, I will make sure that you know as soon as possible. Not boxing ourselves in. I said on the aforementioned podcast that if I could be known for anything, I think I would prefer less to be known as a humanist and more to be known as an atheist, but more to be known as a seeker and a humanist. Knowing my personality, I don't see any way in the world that my characteristics that make me a humanist will ever change. And for that matter, I don't see any way in the world that now my thought process that has me labeled as an atheist will ever change either. But there's something about giving life a disclaimer that seems, and maybe it's just the mood that I'm in on this very special Sunday, but there does seem to be something about giving life a disclaimer that keeps the door open a little wider. Not that you're going to, in the next 6 months, 6 years, 60 years, no longer be a non-believer. That's not the point. The point is making sure that we do not unintentionally create more walls, more barriers, more obstacles that we have to overcome or through which we have to pass in order to feel completely free and to express ourselves completely unreserved and unrestrained. That's still the point for me. From the very beginning of my quote-unquote atheistic experience, the point for me has always been making sure that I was growing into a clearer, more elegant, more progressive, and more successful form of self-expression. Making sure that I was removing obstacles and not adding obstacles. More than once, I've been approached by different types of non-believers engaged in different types of environmentalism, activism, social justice, asking me to be involved. And habitually, very much subconsciously, it seems as if what percolates up into my consciousness is the question, how will this fit into the style, into the brand, if you will, that people within the atheist movement know me by and support me for? This is a very dangerous and slippery slope to find ourselves standing atop of. True freedom may be an experience that is outside of, maybe even above, language and thus labels themselves. If I'm walking through a crowd and no one there recognizes me, but I sense within me the courage and thus the freedom to express myself wholeheartedly in maybe what I wear, maybe in how I fix my hair, maybe in how I represent myself to the next person that I communicate to. Is it okay for me to do so without having to first explain what I am before I even express what or who I am? Does the very act of trying to label, does the very act of trying to express to the world who I am, does it possibly change, even limit who I really am? maybe if you really knew me, and now I'm talking about giving disclaimers. Disclaimers such as warning, this person may not be labeled. Warning, I don't know what I don't know. Warning, my thoughts today are my thoughts. My thoughts tomorrow may be different and still be my thoughts. Don't judge me off of yesterday. Judge me by and for my actions today. Maybe to truly be real, I would be able to say, maybe if you really knew me, then you wouldn't know me at all. Be brave, my friends.